Welcome back to SL Tonight. After the B-movie cheese of Attack of the Giant Leeches, rubber suits, scuba tanks, swamp fog, we're jumping about as far in the other direction as it's possible to jump. This is The Iron Mask, 1929, Douglas Fairbanks, United Artists. One of the most beautiful, most ambitious, most bittersweet adventure films ever made. And a film that, in ways I'll explain as we go, is not just telling a story about Dick Targnan and the Musketeers. It's telling the story of its own ending. The man you're watching right now, Fairbanks, posed with his companions in that opening tableau, frozen like a painting, about to step out of it and speak directly to you. This is a man saying goodbye. He knows it. The audience in 1929 knew it. The director knew it. The crew knew it. And if you knew what to listen for, the film itself knows it too. Let me set the scene. The year is 1929, and in Hollywood, 1929 is a year of absolute panic. The Jazz Singer had come out in October 1927, Al Jolson singing and talking on screen. Within 18 months, the entire studio system, which had spent 30 years perfecting the art of silent cinema, was in freefall. Every studio was scrambling to wire their theaters for sound. Every star was being tested to see if their voice matched their image. And the results were brutal. Some of the biggest names in silent cinema had voices that audiences found jarring, ridiculous, or just wrong. Careers that had been built over decades collapsed in a year. The talent that had made you a god in silence was worthless if your voice didn't work in a microphone. Douglas Fairbanks understood what was happening better than almost anyone. He was 45 years old. He had been the king of Hollywood for a decade, the biggest male star in the world, arguably. The man who had single-handedly invented the swashbuckling adventure film as a mainstream genre. And he was watching the entire medium he'd mastered get pulled out from under him. Here's what you need to understand about Fairbanks and silent film. It wasn't just a medium he worked in. It was the medium he was born for. His son, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., later said that his father thought of his movie acting as a kind of ballet, pure physical storytelling, movement and expression and acrobatics, no words needed or wanted. Silent film was his narrative language. The microphone terrified him, not because he lacked a good voice, he didn't, but because the primitive recording technology of 1929 made stunt-filled, physically dynamic filmmaking essentially impossible. You couldn't do a sword fight in front of a microphone. You couldn't leap across rooftops and simultaneously deliver dialogue. The sound era was going to require a different kind of performance from a different kind of performer, and Fairbanks, at 45, had no enthusiasm for reinventing himself. So he made a decision. Before the talkie swallowed everything, he was going to make one last great adventure film, the best one he'd ever made, a farewell to the genre that had made him legend. Director Alan Dwan, who had been Fairbanks' collaborator since the earliest days, who had directed him in Robin Hood in 1922, later said of this production, Doug seemed to be under some sort of compulsion to make this picture one of his best. That compulsion is visible in every frame. The film's working title was 20 years after. The final title, The Iron Mask, is taken from the central mystery, The Prisoner in the Iron Mask, one of the great unsolved puzzles of French history. There really was a man imprisoned in iron behind the walls of French fortresses from around 1669 until his death in 1703. His identity was never officially confirmed. Voltaire believed he was Louis XV's secret twin brother. Dumas turned that theory into one of the great adventure novels of the 19th century. And Fairbanks turned Dumas into the film we're watching now.
kiss truly is a delicate plant requiring privacy to grow into a tender blossom, the dream of all lovers. The bell of the Cathedral of Notre Dame remind D'Artagnan of his friend and fellow musketeer, Aramis. He might be in danger.
Let's talk what about went into making this picture, because the production story is extraordinary. Fairbanks hired Maurice Lelore as a production consultant. Lelore was a French artist in his 70s, a genuine authority on the period of Louis XV and the illustrator of the definitive 1894 edition of the Du Monde Note. He brought academic rigor to the historic detail of this film that was almost unheard of in Hollywood production of the era. The costumes, the architecture, the furniture, the court etiquette, all of it was researched against historical sources and checked by a man who'd spent his career studying this period. The art director was Lawrence Irving, grandson of the legendary Victorian actor Sir Henry Irving, one of the most famous stage performers of the 19th century. William Cameron Menzies served as consulting production designer. And I apologize if I butcher anybody's name in any of this. I'm sure that I have, and again, my apologies. Menzies would later design Gone with the Wind. Even worse, my apologies. These are not B-movie credits. These are the best people working in Hollywood being given the resources to do their best work. And then there is Alan Dwan himself. Dwan is one of cinema history's greatest underrated talents. A director who is working at highest levels of craft from early 1910s through the 1950s, quietly producing masterpiece after masterpiece, while other directors got historical credit. And all the while having little old me butcher the hell out of his name. Sure. Museum of Modern Art later noted that his filmmaking for Fairbanks represented the classic silent style at its absolute peak. The spiral staircase battle sequence in this film, you'll see it, is a piece of pure visual cinema that has no equal in the 1920s. Fairbanks himself, and this is the detail I find most remarkable, wrote the screenplay. He didn't want his name on it as writer because he'd already star and producer and that seemed like enough. So he used his middle names as the pseudonym. The screenplay credit reads Story by Elton Thomas. Douglas Elton Thomas Ullman was his full birth name. He hid in plain sight. Now here's the sound question, and it's fascinating. Fairbanks insisted on making the Iron Mask as a silent film. He was right to. The recording technology in 1929 was completely incompatible with the kind of physical filmmaking this picture required. You cannot record live sound during a sword fight. You cannot mic a man leaping across a castle wall. But he made one concession. Midway through production, he decided to add 3 short spoken sequences. Fairbanks addressing the audience directly, a prologue, an interlude at the halfway point. The sequences are shot in tableau style, Fairbanks stepping out on posed portrait and speaking to it. What you're watching in those moments is the very first time Douglas Fairbanks ever spoke on film. Alan Dwan later told film historians that when Fairbanks heard the playback of his voice for the first time, his own voice coming back at him through the recording equipment, he was shaken, deeply unsettled. The voice in the machine was him, but it wasn't the him he knew. It was a different kind of performance, different relationship with the audience, and he didn't like what he heard in it. Not because his voice was bad, but because it meant everything was changing, and he couldn't stop it.
Porthos, too, has women on his mind. Starts the only battle the Musketeers ever lost in fair fight. Of course, it has to be with a fair six. For the first time in his life, a panic-stricken Porthos screams a terrified, "Hola!" Athos hears him. Aramis springs bravely to the side of his comrades, and they flee together. But D'Artagnan hears only the pounding of a lover's heart. As the flood of battle at last sweeps close to him, he leaps to meet the foe and draws his swords. He will fight, yes? No, yes, no, he won't. Here, indeed, discretion is the better part of valor. Caught between the she-devils and the deep blue sea, they choose the water. Next morning, the city is in ferment. The pressure beyond the gates is so great that the people are admitted to the courtyard. Adjoining the Queen's apartment, Constance prepares the layette. She is informed.
Before we get deeper into the story, let's talk about who Douglas Fairbanks actually was, because he's one of those figures who gets reduced to a few bullet points: acrobatics, silent era, swashbuckler, when the reality is considerably more interesting and considerably more important. He was born Douglas Elton Thomas Ullman, as we've already mentioned, in Denver, Colorado, in 1883. His father was a lawyer who abandoned the family when Douglas was 5. His mother, strong, resourceful, determined, raised him on her own and took the surname Fairbanks from her previous marriage, giving it to her sons as well. From childhood, Douglas was restlessly physical, unable to sit still, climbing everything, performing for anyone who'd watch. By the time he was 12, he was performing on stage. By his 20s, he was a legitimate Broadway star. He came to Hollywood in 1915, worked briefly and uncomfortably under D.W. Griffith, formed his own production company almost immediately, and within a few years had become one of the most popular actors on earth. His early films were comic, energetic, modern set pieces. He played the optimistic, physically capable American everyman. Fast, funny, wholesome. They were enormously popular, but they didn't make him legendary. What made him legendary was a decision he'd made around 1920. He decided to reinvent himself entirely. The Mark of Zorro in 1920, The Three Musketeers in 1921, Robin Hood in 1922, which at the time of its production was the most expensive film ever made, with a castle set so large that other filmmakers would come to the studio just to look at it. The Thief of Baghdad in 1924, The Black Pirate in 1926, one after another, each one more elaborate than the last, each one a world unto itself, each one built on a simple foundation. Douglas Fairbanks, grinning, leaping, fighting, winning. No stunt doubles, no trick photography for the physical stuff. Everything you see him do, he did. He was an extraordinary athlete, trained boxer, acrobat, horseman, and he brought a physical honesty to his work that audiences could feel even through the screen. When he leapt from a balcony onto the back of a horse, that was him doing it for real, in front of the camera, on the first take, or the second, or the third, until it looked exactly right. Off-screen, he was equally remarkable. In 1919, he co-founded United Artists with Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, and D.W. Griffith,
The necessity of
four of the
aggression on the
most
part of
powerful
Father Joseph
creative
is
figures
indeed
in
well
Hollywood
founded.
banding together
De
to
Rochefort,
distribute
having
their
many
own
times
work
seen
outside
messages
the
thus
studio
taken to his
system.
eminence, becomes
It was a
inquisitive.
revolutionary
He
act.
resolves by
The
a simple trick
studios
to
had
learn the
controlled
secret passed
everything.
to the cardinal.
United Artists gave artists the ability to own their productions and their profits.
A
He was
substitution of
also the
scraps
first
of paper.
president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. He hosted the very first Academy Award ceremony in 1929, the same year this film came out. He personally delivered the first university-level lecture in film appreciation at the University of Southern California and was
Cardinal realizes
instrumental
that
in
enemies of the
establishing the
regime can
first
do
film
irreparable
curriculum in
damage.
America. The
Two
King of
heirs to the
Hollywood was
throne.
not just a performer,
Two
he
rival
was an
parties of
architect of the
courtiers. More
institute that
quarrels,
still
more
shapes the
bloodshed.
industry today.
Poor
His
Franz,
marriage to Mary
helpless,
Pickford,
torn between two
America's sweetheart,
passions.
the most famous actress in the world, was
The
Hollywood's
secret of the
royalty in
twins
the
must
most
indeed
complete
be
sense.
forever guarded.
Their home, Pickfair,
Francis
was one
went
of the
peace,
great social centers
and
of
if
the
he,
era.
the cardinal, is to
Everyone came to
retain his
Pickfair,
power.
Einstein, Winston Churchill, the Prince of Wales. Even the Beverly Hillbillies
No
loved Mary
pretender
Pickford.
this,
But
a true prince.
And in 1929,
De
standing at the
Rochefort
peak
sees
of
an
everything he
opportunity.
had built,
Father
Fairbanks
Joseph is
looked at the
instructed to
microphone
prepare for
and
a
what was
long
coming
voyage.
and decided to go out on his own terms on one last adventure.
The cardinal has a plan. He sends a page to summon de Rochefort. Aware that Constance shares possession of a great secret, one so sacred it might well spell the future of France, the cardinal charges her to keep her lips sealed. Richelieu entrusts the wily de Rochefort with Constance's safety. She must not be permitted to see anyone until further notice. The cardinal is not at liberty to tell his reasons, but de Rochefort is making his own plans. In accordance with the cardinal's command, Father Joseph, accompanied by the midwife, secretly takes the twin away to the Spanish border. The child shall be raised as a commoner with no knowledge of his royal birth. Meanwhile, in the great ballroom, the king holds a reception in honor of his firstborn. Had he known the cradle should have held two sons, he might have been less self-satisfied with the cardinal's congratulations. To the notorious Milady de Winter, de Rochefort comes to reveal this chance of fate. The future of France may be in their hands. He tells her he will turn Constance over to her. She is to escort Constance to the convent of Saint-Gamel. There, force her to tell the whole of the cardinal's secret and plans. He will play one against the other, cardinal against king, for his own ambition. Knowing Constance to be... One of the chair carriers runs with the news to the musketeers' barracks. D'Artagnan, wake up! Constance taken by force, by de Rochefort. Rescue! All for one and one for all. And hang the tack. The wily cheat is in no mood to cross steel with this angry Gascon bent on justice. Rochefort's thugs are powerless to help. Rochefort is stubborn. He will not talk. He has to be persuaded. Probe goes on. Where is she? Where is Constance? Talk or fall 200 feet to the bottom of the well. Talk or die. The Cardinal's guard look on, afraid to act. A strand at a time, steel cuts through him. 3 strands of it, and now but 2. Now 1. De Rochefort breaks. The convent of Saint-Guerre. To the rescue! A stableman granted audience with the Cardinal tells of de Rochefort's trickery and capture and of Constance's abduction by Milady de Winter.
The story Fairbanks chose for his farewell is, in some ways, about exactly what he was going through. The Iron Mask adapts the final section of Alexandre Dumas' The Vicomte de Braglione, butchered the hell out of that, the last of 3 Great Musketeer novels, published serially between 1847 and 1850. Where The Three Musketeers is the story of young men at the beginning of everything, Braglione is the story of those same men at the end. Older, slower, the world they were born to has moved on. New powers, new politics, new generation. The swashbuckling era they inhabited is closer. Dumas understood something about the literary sequels he was writing, that the tragedy of the Musketeers is not being killed by their enemies, but surviving long enough to see themselves become relics. Men who were magnificent in their time, outliving their time. Fairbanks at 46 played D'Artagnan in his final adventure, was living that story rather than just performing it. Here's the plot, briefly. When King Louis XIII of France had a son, the future Louis XV, the Queen delivers a second child. Twins. Cardinal Richelieu, the scheming power behind the throne, immediately sees the second twin as a threat. 2 royal heirs means 2 potential factions, 2 potential civil wars, 2 potential catastrophes. He has the second child, Philippe, sent secretly to Spain to be raised in hiding. D'Artagnan is drawn into the conspiracy from the beginning. His lover, Constance, was present at the birth, and her knowledge makes her dangerous. She's packed off to a convent. D'Artagnan and the Musketeers are dispersed across France, exiled from court. 20 years pass. Louis grows up behind King Louis XIV XIV. Richelieu dies, and Philippe, the hidden twin, falls into the hands of the villain Count de Rochefort, who sees him as the perfect instrument for seizing control of France. If you could substitute one king for another, the identical twin, locked in an iron mask with the rightful ruler, control the throne. D'Artagnan, now older, now the guardian of the young king, realizes what happened. He rallies the musketeers, aging men, called back for one final campaign, and they ride to stop the conspiracy. The Dumas novel kills all four of the musketeers. Fairbanks kept that ending. Every one of them dies. D'Artagnan laughs. This was unprecedented in Fairbanks' films. In every picture he had made before this one, Zorro, Robin Hood, Three Musketeers, Black Pirate, his character won, survived, triumphed. The hero always rides off into the sunset. Not here. Here the hero rides off into something else entirely.
No, Constance Bonacieux is not here. But he hears her voice. Hola! One for all and all for one. Mark of the public criminal, burnt by a branding iron into her flesh, a sign to all. Exposed to Constance as a criminal, Milady de Winter is desperate. If caught thus in a second act of crime by the laws of France, Milady must face public execution.
The cast Fairbanks assembled for this film is worthy of the material. Nigel de Bruyere returns as Cardinal Richelieu. He played the same role in Fairbanks' 1921 Three Musketeers, and the continuity matters. De Bruyere understood Richelieu in a way that doesn't get credit in most accounts of this film. He's not playing a simple villain. He's playing a man who made a decision he believed was right. Hiding the second twin, preserve stability, and avoid civil war, and is now seeing the decision metastasize into something monstrous decades later. There's a specific kind of culpability in that. The man who set something in motion and then died before he could see where it led, and de Broglie carries that weight without the script ever spelling it out. Marguerite de Lamont as Constance also returns from the 1921 film. Her early scenes with Fairbanks, a playful, physical courtship that one Letterboxd reviewer called one of the greatest openings to a film I have ever seen, established the emotional stakes with a remarkable economy. This is a woman and a man who have spent 20 years apart because of the same conspiracy. They now have to fight together. That's the backstory. It's told in looks and gestures and small physical moments rather than dialogue cards, the way silent cinema at its best always works. Ulrich Haupt plays the villain Count de Rochefort, cold, calculating, the instrument of what Richelieu's original sin has become. He's the right kind of villain for this kind of story. Competent, not pantomiming, operating from a coherent logic rather than gratuitous malice. And then there is William Bakewell, playing both royal twins, Louis and Philippe. The dual performance in an era before digital technology required Bakewell to appear in scenes where both twins are present, though through careful split-screen photography, and the compositing is genuinely impressive for 1929. Henry Sharp photographed the film, and his cinematography deserves to be spoken of in the same breath as the great work being done in European cinema at the same time. The New York Times original review singled out the
The three
photography by
musketeers,
name,
Athos, Porthos, and
striking
Aramis, and
contrast of
arranged to take
small
the law into
figures
their own
against
hands and
gigantic
deliver the
shadows.
murderers to the public
That's
executioner.
exactly right.
And order
Fairbanks
their
hired the
deeds.
best people available, gave them resources and time, and the result looks nothing like conventional Hollywood adventure picture. It looks like a French historical epic with an American star at its center. And then I come along and make it a crap.
Then de Rochefort's cutthroats close in on the Cardinal's troop. Some distance away, the musketeers are captured by their deadliest rivals. The Cardinal's guard formally arrest the musketeers for continuing to take the law into their own hands. Disarmed, the musketeers are set against the wall for execution. Your guards would take the lives of my friends. Single-handed, they shall have revenge. The Cardinal asks a moment to ponder. Constance dead. A murderess executed. Enough blood has been shed. Now this strife twixt musketeer and guard shall end. D'Artagnan's plea saves his friends, but there's to be a harsh penalty. Richelieu's plan concerns the state, and these continuing disputes between his guard and the king's musketeers. The four musketeers must separate, never to come together again on pain of death. His judgment, oh, a sorry day. The musketeers are banished, each to his own province, never to visit Paris again, nor set foot beyond the bounds of his own fields. As for you, D'Artagnan, a splendid soldier, reliable, devoted too. You henceforth shall be bodyguard of the future king, beloved of France, the nation's one.
Notice what's happening in that sequence. The footwork, the spatial awareness, the way the fighters use the architecture of the space rather than just standing in front of it and swinging. Fairbanks studied fencing seriously and worked with expert fencing masters on every production. What you're watching is choreography that was designed to look like real fighting rather than theatrical fighting. A distinction that mattered enormously to him and that you can feel in the rhythm of the scene. He was 46 years old doing this. 46! After years of this kind of physical work, and the athleticism is still remarkable. You can see the age in his face. Fairbanks didn't try to hide it in this film, and the choice gives the performance a gravity his earlier work didn't have. This is a man who'd been doing this for 20 years inside the story and 40 years in reality, and his body carries both histories.
Cardinal Richelieu, driven hard by the responsibilities of high office, lives in semi-retirement. And a royal father educates his son in courtly etiquette. In failing health, His Eminence lives in hourly expectation of death, troubled by word that the second twin bears an identical likeness to the heir. Dangers inherent are obvious and weigh heavily on the Cardinal's mind. He decides he must protect the prince somehow. His Eminence provides that the rightful twin may always be identified from the other. With the aid of the court jeweler, he caused a gold doubloon to be broken. The smaller piece hangs on a chain around the throat of the infant prince. And its mate he places about the neck of Captain D'Artagnan. And so, by joining the pieces, the true heir to the throne of France and the prince's first guardian are known to one another for all time. He starts to say, I hold a secret, but the chill hand is upon him. The life spring ebbs, and the great voice is silenced. A great statesman passes into history. The church loses a noble servant, and the ship of state is without its pilot. What was this secret that Richelieu and Constance shared? The other one. Across the Spanish border, the prince's twin brother is reared by servants of the late cardinal. The banished de Rochefort, living nearby, holds the twin under his very eye. He bides his time. He has only to wait patiently for the proper day. Upon the death of Louis XIII, the heir to the throne, or the Dauphin as he was called, became France's King Louis XIV. Both he and his twin had grown to manhood. The brothers are alike as two peas in a pod. Years have passed and more since Richelieu bent his iron will to break the bonds that held us four. But Porthos, Athos, Aramis, I will ride once more. Once more we'll heed the clarion call of all for one and one for all. During the years, de Rochefort's connivings have brought the exiled twin under his control. Secretly, they have returned to Paris. De Rochefort has lavished upon the usurper the trappings of royalty, teaching him to copy even the handwriting of his brother, the king. Yet the quality of the spirit so generous in the king is replaced in the brother by hatred and viciousness. The king's valet, a de Rochefort spy, brings long-awaited news. Within the week, an older D'Artagnan, after a lifetime of loyal service, will retire and leave the court. The young king will be without a bodyguard. Every detail of their plan has gone over. The map.
Here's something worth understanding about how this film got made and why it looks the way it does, aside from my terrible work. Douglas Fairbanks was not an employee. He was not working for hire under a studio contract. He had founded United Artists in 1919 precisely to prevent that, to give himself and his fellow artists complete creative control over their work and complete ownership of their profits. The Elton Corporation, which produced The Iron Mask, was his own company. Every decision about this film was his decision. That's why the production consultant is a 70-year-old from a French expert on the court of Louis XV rather than a cheaper option who'd be fine for the audience. That's why the art director is a man whose grandfather was Sir Henry Irving. That's why William Cameron Menzies, who would go on to design Gone with the Wind, was brought in to consult on the sets. When you control your own production and you believe you're making your last great film, you hire the best people you can find, and you don't ask what they cost. The budget was enormous. Fairbanks personally financed a significant portion of it because he believed in the film and because United Artists gave him the structure to do so. The resulting production is visually lush in ways that most 1920s Hollywood adventure films simply weren't. The interiors are vast and historically specific. The court scenes have a weight of something that was actually researched rather than approximate. Alan Blanc later said that Fairbanks was under a compulsion on this production, that the word that keeps coming back to people who were there described the making of this film. compulsion. Like a man who knows something is ending and is determined to make sure it ends beautifully. There's a detail about the source material that I think explains a lot of that compulsion. When Fairbanks wrote the screenplay, under his middle name pseudonym Elton Thomas, he didn't just adapt the final Dumas novel. He wove in elements from earlier in the Musketeer saga that he hadn't used in the 1921 film. He created a complete arc. He was doing what Dumas had done, writing the end of the story in a way that honored and completed everything
Captain
that came
D'Artagnan
before.
arrives outside his
It's the
lodging and is
behavior of a
amazed to
man
find
who is
himself
thinking
beset
in
by
terms
ruffians.
of legacy.
Angrily, the Gascon plans his battle. First, he deals with the dagger man decoy, sticks him with his own blade, throws the man's cape to the edge of an open sewer, places his own cape over the decoy's body, and fires his own pistol. Hey, up! On to the balcony. There, they believe, goes D'Artagnan. A thoughtful D'Artagnan returns to his lodging. For a peaceful man to be waylaid on a city street is something new. He had spent the evening with his king. He reflects. Has the palace discipline been slackening too? Sentries were not where they should have been. His soldierly heart is disturbed for the safety of his king. De Rochefort's plan is working without a hitch. Sentries at the outer gate have been overpowered. Entry is forced into the inner quadrangle. The palace is entered through a servant's postern leading to long-forgotten cellars. Success. No sound, no word, no warning. The pretender waits impatiently below for the deed which will make him king. In the anteroom to the king's bedchamber, de Rochefort's maggot awaits his master's signal, ready for the final treachery. And a little after 11 o'clock on this fateful night, in one tragic moment, France loses her rightful king.
The Man in the Iron Mask, Felipe, the Hidden Twin, is one of cinema's greatest prisoners. There is a specific scene that keeps coming up in every account of this film's production. The Iron Masked King, languishing in his tower prison, notices a fisherman in the sea below his window. He takes a pewter platter and scratches a message into it, then throws it from the window down to the rocks. The fisherman picks it up. And then, as one IMDb reviewer dryly noted, the fisherman reads it. Despite being French working class in the 17th century, at a time when literacy among that class was essentially non-existent. The film knows this and doesn't apologize for it. This is not a documentary. This is Dumas. The point is not historical accuracy. The point is the moment a man sealed behind iron, reaching through a tiny window towards freedom, using the only material available to him to send a message into the world. That image works. It worked in 1929 and it works now. The Iron
His
Mask
body thrown in
itself
the
is the
river.
film's central
Complete
symbol, and it's
triumph
worth
at
sitting
last.
with for a moment. The mask is literally about hiding identity. The second twin imprisoned behind metal so that no one can see his face. No one can recognize him as the king's double.
An iron
It's
mask,
about the violence of
an
erasure.
invention of the
A
devil.
man whose face is
An
the truth
iron
of the
mask, a prison
conspiracy,
within
is
a prison,
forced
is
to wear
placed
the
over the
lie
head of
that
the rightful
conceals it.
King Louis XIV,
There's something in that
locked
which
to the neck,
resonates
his
beyond Dumas'
countenance
plot.
concealed from
The
all men.
1929 was the year Hollywood was forcing its own stars to wear new masks, to become sound picture performers, to adapt their identities to a new technology, to hide what has made them into
The
what
true
they
king
were
is
and
led
perform
away.
as something different. Fairbanks refused. He made this film silent, on his terms, wearing his own face. He put the mask
In the
in the
quiet
villain.
of the royal apartments, the true king's bed is occupied by the usurper. Trusted servitors have been spirited away. The twins' lackeys have replaced them. De Rochefort's plan is complete. Poor France. Ruled by a youth driven near to lunacy by a solitary childhood, by de Rochefort's lies, by his own poisoned dreams. Truly a madman. Suffering in human life is proportioned to human strength. When the young king, stupefied and crushed, found himself led a prisoner to a cell in the Chateau Sainte Marguerite in the south of France, he fancied at first that death is like sleep and has its dreams. He believed himself to be a spectator, a palpable phantom of his own suffering, a torture the more terrible since it might be eternal. Eternal death. How can I have died? I am a king, yet not a king, enthroned upon a funereal couch. No, no, dear God, do not punish me who have done nothing. Why am I thus punished? Like a cloak, the chill of the dungeon falls upon his shoulders. So dwells the real Louis XIV in a living hell to remain thus the rest of his days. The Queen Mother, always restricted, prevented from seeing her son, determines finally to pay him a visit. In place of the affectionate and courtly Louis XIV, to her horror, she finds herself repulsed. Doubts, again doubts. What strange malady besets my son? She thinks again of the other one. De Rochefort hurries to the king's apartment, fearful that a mother's heart has sensed the truth. In pretense of humility, he asks the Queen Mother to leave. Affairs of state. De Rochefort is determined. This shall not happen again, and whispers death. Day by day, night upon night, the prisoner prays for some way to get word to D'Artagnan. A heaven-sent fisherman hoves to. He finishes scratching a message into pewter, and as all good prayers must be, his prayer is answered. Millet and mackerel are running, and then a catch, apparently from heaven.
And here is where the Iron Mask becomes something that no other Fairbanks film is. D'Artagnan is old, the Musketeers are old, they are recalled for this final mission, and you can see in every frame that they know what it means. Dumas understood this. The greatest heroism isn't the young man charging into battle for glory. It's the old man going back one more time, knowing the cost, because the thing that needs to be done hasn't changed just because he got old. Fairbanks plays this with a restraint that is genuinely unprecedented in his career. The grin is still there, the athleticism is still there, but underneath it there is something darker and more true. He's not performing energy and confidence, he's performing a man who performing energy and confidence. He's the mask of a swashbuckler worn over the height of the years. Before split screen, where musketeers must separate and go their own ways in the early part of the film, has been described by film critics as one of the most visually striking compositions in silent cinema. 4 frames, 4 men, geometry of friendship being pulled apart. It's a simple technique used with complete mastery. And then they come back together, older, slower, heavier, with everything that happened. And they ride. One by one, they die. The Yama ending. Porto's going first, in a moment of tremendous physicality that allows Fairbanks' old friend to go out on his own terms. Then Aramis, then Athos, and finally D'Artagnan himself, at the gates of the palace after the mission is complete, having given everything he had. This was the first time Douglas Fairbanks ever died on screen.
Threading his way through the perfumed route of the court's chattering idlers, D'Artagnan finds himself a stranger in a strange atmosphere. And there is reason, he thinks, for this curious tension. De Rochefort and the king. This cannot be the boy I helped nurture into manhood. This is not the face of my king. Those are not his hands that risked neither parried steel nor engaged a point. What's been happening at court? De Rochefort's back in favor, a disgraced exile once more sporting about the throne room in the king's presence. D'Artagnan is amazed and shocked. But a further shock is in store. A chain and coin is passed to de Rochefort. If he can believe his eyes, in all the years he served the king, they never left his royal person. He overhears a snatch of conversation. The other one. And suddenly he hears the dying voice of Constance. The other one. The other one. What did she mean? A message signed by the royal coin. A king, not a king. And a court alive with known traitors. D'Artagnan smells a rat. But a rat has seen him and gives warning. The palace guards are alerted. And all exits barred. Little do they reckon with a resourceful old musketeer. D'Artagnan orders a king's loyal troop to be hurried to meet him at the Chateau Sainte Marguerite. Couriers are to be dispatched to his old friends, the 3 musketeers, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis. To arms, musketeers! Your king has need of you. One for all, and all for one. The jig is up. D'Artagnan lives and knows. There's pewter plate. Perhaps even now he has reached the prison gate. De Rochefort cannot believe his future lies in a common plate. Quickly, he resolves to end all doubts. He decides to ride at the head of his troops to prevent any attempt to free the king. The puzzled D'Artagnan has reached the Chateau Sainte Marguerite, certain that his comrades will join him. Under cover of the raging storm, he rose to the grotto beneath the castle. Many a time as a young officer, he had patrolled this grotto passage. It led, he knew, to the arsenal. Beyond that, the armory. Then the main hall and staircase to the tower itself. Up there is the man in the iron mask, the writer of the message. To his astonishment, D'Artagnan finds the entrance to the arsenal is newly walled. Is prepared to hazard it alone if necessary. The fisherman returns to the opposite bank to await the arrival of help. Athos, a few years older, a little more grizzled, the same brave companion as of old, ready and willing for any gambit. And now Aramis. Now two of the valiant comrades have arrived. No time to wait for old Porthos, no time for explanations. There's a job to be done. Forward! Through the racks of gunpowder barrels to the main hall, and the tower staircase itself. Where's the prisoner? Before your gullet tastes this edge, you bloated villain. D'Artagnan knows the voice. It is his true and rightful king, Louis XIV, King of France. The castle guards. The challenge is met. Hola! The musketeers fight together again. battle, Porthos. A little late, but the more eager on that account, and thirsty as much for the sight of his companions as for a little drop of blood. All for one and one for all. These certain cherished friends that I shall wait for you. What good times we had together, eh? Good Porthos, farewell. You died as you lived, for love of country, in the service of your king. The fisherman gives warning of the approach of enemies. The king and gallop off to Paris. De Rochefort rides hard in a last effort to keep his house from crumbling. The odds are 10 to 1. Majesty. On to Paris. Farewell, gallant Aramis. A traitor's bullet struck you down. Meanwhile, Athos crosses swords with de Rochefort. But at the highest price of all, Athos joins his comrades. Without knowing his own peril, the half-wit, half-king entertains his royal mother at a palace luncheon. Cunningly, he says, a private matter. Troops from the palace, friends or foe? Friends. D'Artagnan breathes relief. The king is safe. God save the king! The Queen Mother suspects this attempt on her life. The witch's brew, a subtle poison already responsible for many an agonizing death. Raise your glass, madam. Drink to your king, to your country, and its illustrious people. Come, I give you France. Dare she refuse? It is the edict of her son, the king. The toast, but a warning cry. The usurper finally gets his rightful crown. De Rochefort's own damnable invention, the Iron Mask. His to the end of his days. As D'Artagnan pours away the poisoned wine, the usurper takes swift, bitter revenge. D'Artagnan knows himself mortally wounded, but allows no sign to mar the happiness of his king. Blood, the weapon of the murderer, with crimson evidence on the blade. Grateful Louis looks for Captain D'Artagnan to honor him with the baton of a Marshal of France. But where is the musketeer? The court resounds with the king's commands and his cry to find his friend and mentor. What a man may think when he knows of the approach of death is secret between himself and his maker.
What you're watching now is the ending that people have been talking about for nearly 100 years. D'Artagnan dies. The mission is complete, true king is restored, and then something extraordinary happens. The spirit of our D'Artagnan, young again, the way he was at the beginning of everything, rises and joins his companion. The other musketeers, also young again, also restored to what they were, and they ride together into whatever comes after. The final title card, the beginning. That's the last thing Douglas Fairbanks as D'Artagnan, as himself, says to his audience. Alan Duane later described how the sequence came together, and what makes it devastatingly is its simplicity. No elaborate special effects, the four men, young again, writing. The image doing everything the words don't need to do. What the audience in 1929 understood, what Fairbanks knew they understood, was that this was not just D'Artagnan riding into the afterlife. This was Douglas Fairbanks riding out of the cinema he had built. The swashbuckling hero, the silent film adventurer, king of Hollywood, saying goodbye in the only language he was completely fluent in. Images, movement. The physical poetry of a man who had spent 20 years doing things that no one else could do. Fairbanks biographer Jeffrey Vance has written, as the valedictorian to the silent screen, the Iron Mask is unsurpassed. He's right. The Iron Mask was a massive box office success in 1929. Critics understood what they were watching. Most reviews describe it in terms of farewell and legacy, even at the time of release. The New York Times called it Fairbanks at his finest. Variety said it felt like the closing chapter of an era. Both were correct. After this film, Fairbanks made 5 more pictures. He co-starred with Mary Pickford in The Taming of the Shrew, a talkie. It did not go well. The sound versions of Douglas Fairbanks, competent, occasionally charming, are not the same thing as the silent version. His son later said his father's heart was never in those films the way it had been in the silence. He retired from acting in 1934. He and Pickford divorced in 1936 after he began an affair that eventually led to a third marriage. He died of a heart attack in December of 1939. He was 56 years old. At his funeral, the Hollywood community gathered as it always does, but this time with a specific sense that something the industry had been built on was truly gone. He was buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles, where he remains. His son, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., narrated the 1952 re-release of this film, a version with the intertitles removed and a new narration. It's an interesting version, though the 1999 restoration that brought back the original spoken sequences and MoMA's work from the original camera negative that Fairbanks himself gave to the museum in 1935, those are the definitive way to see this picture. The artist saved his own work. He knew it was worth saving. The Iron Mask isn't just a movie. It's Douglas Fairbanks stepping down from the screen in the only way he knew how, with a sword in his hand and his friends beside him, riding toward whatever comes next. Is it his greatest performance? I'd argue yes, but The Mark of Sorrow has had a case, and so does The Thief of Baghdad. Drop that debate in the comments. I genuinely want to hear it. Next week, we're keeping the classic Hollywood train rolling. Hit subscribe, support SL Tonight, and keep the spirit of old school adventure alive. This has been SL Tonight. Felix Lebeski. We are where the nightmares go. Good night.